Pierre, our last meeting of the Retired Gentlemen's Reading Group was on Neil Ferguson's The War of the World, which turned out to be one of our most popular books that we'd had. Do you want to give a summary of the book?
Yeah, okay. This is the book here, Neil Ferguson, The War of the World, and the subtitle 20th Century Conflict and the Descent of the West. And we had a very good session on that a few weeks ago. The book is titled The War of the World. Is what it is. It's a look at Ferguson asks the question, why is it that the 20th century was the most violent century in human history? And he gives some explanations of what he means by that. And in answering that question, he really focuses on the period between about 1904 and 1953, starting with the Russo-Japanese War of 1905 and winding up with the end of the Korean War. And then he does have a section at the end on the Cold War as a sequel to that. And in answering the question, he picks out three primary factors. He admits that there are just ample bookloads and boatloads of factors, but he focuses on three that he considers really critical. The first one is economic volatility. The second one is the particular stresses that come with ethnic differences when you have them in the same geographic area. And the third one is what he calls the decline of dominant empires. And if I were to summarize his thesis, it would be what I might call Ferguson's theorem that economic volatility often triggers politicization of ethnic differences, which can turn violent, especially in what he calls strategic borderlands. And the first part of the book, the first is an overview, and he explains what he means by each of those three factors. Goes over each of them. He talks about the kind of empires that characterized Europe and the world prior to the First World War. Old empires that, by and large, balanced multi-ethnic interests rather well. And they would usually have a dominant ethnic group in that empire, but they were pretty heterogeneous. And then these collapsed within quite a number of them within a period of about 20 years. And new empires came up, and the new empires or political powers tended to look for centralized power and economic control and social homogeneity, as opposed to the more diversified or heterogeneous older empires. And he goes into that in his overview. It's quite an interesting section. The second factor is the economic one, the collapse of the pre-1914 kind of economic prosperity and globalized economy that existed in the world. And it was, for me, very interesting because I hadn't realized that in many ways the economy of the world was more globally integrated and mobile prior to the First World War than it was at any other succeeding period up until the early 1990s, the collapse of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union and the opening up of the world in the 1990s. And he looks at how that globalized world economy collapsed with World War I, then how that led into the Depression of the 1920s and 30s and the effect of mass industrialization and of mass unemployment in terms of inequalities. And then that leads into the third factor that he develops in that introduction, which is the ethnic differences one. And it's a really fascinating look at at the growth of the notions of race and ethnicity in the 19th and early 20th century, and that remain with us in many cases until today, and of the kind of social phenomenon that evolved from this different notion of race and raciality that developed in the 19th century. There was all race was always there before, but there was a particular flavor to it that came by the end of the 1900s, the 1800s. It's something he calls the gene mean in our social thought. The whole movement of eugenics that arose and all around the world, you would find it, including in very disturbing ways in our own country. The idea of racial superiority is a particular form of racial or ethnic thinking that characterized anti-Semitism. The place of the other, the notion of the other in society, that a dominant group would have of the other. Especially in Eastern Europe and in Central Europe, the phenomenon of what he calls diasporas or pales, ethnic settlements within a larger geographic, more homogeneous geographic region. All of this sets the scene for the next 3 chapters, which deal with the situation immediately prior to World War I and World War I itself and Versailles. That's the if you will, part 1 of the book, and the results of Versailles, Wilsonian politics leading to the principle of self-determination of nations and the creation, with the collapse of the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, but also of other ones, of nationally based countries. And since very few of these countries were homogeneous, the moment you started creating them on the basis of a dominant national identity, you have a situation of minorities and situations of stress, especially, then also the decline of some empires, the disappearance of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the weakening that began of the French and the British empires, and the rise of new empires like Japan and the Americans following the Spanish-American War and the First World War, and the rise of new powers like Turkey that came out of the ashes of the old Ottoman Empire. The second part 2 of the book deals with the Depression and the build-up to World War II, the rise in the Soviet Union, in Russia, of Bolshevism, the creation of the Soviet Union and out of the old Russian Empire, and of Stalinism as a political philosophy, Stalinism / communism, Bolshevik communism. In Europe, you had the rise of fascism, particularly the Third Reich, coming out of the Depression or during the Depression, and the particular brand of fascism that National Socialism consisted of, the ideas of Lebensraum, the need and the vision of Hitler of an expansion of a greater Germany from the Volga to the Rhine, and the particular importance of anti-Semitism within National Socialism. There are other forms of racism as well, and that's particularly against the Gypsies, and the Slavs, but anti-Semitism was almost the defining one for National Socialism. And then part 3 is
Pierre, should we do part 3 in part 2 of the video?
Oh, have I already run up that long?
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Okay, well.